Hello, everyone, and welcome to session 5 of the Cybersecurity Talk series organized by ADL Connect. Our aim is to provide you with valuable insights into the latest security trends in the digital world and how Axiata Digital Labs can help businesses accelerate their digital adoption globally. Today, we are diving into a world where technology meets security and digital resilience takes center stage. So, our voyage will explore the fascinating realm of Linux Server Hardening and how it profoundly shapes the security of our digital landscapes. In our interconnected era, safeguarding digital domains is paramount. It's not just about knowing the theory, but also about having the practical know how to ensure digital robustness. And here to guide us through this intricate landscape is a true expert in the field, Mr. Sashika Suren. As the head of system security and site reliability engineering of ADL, Mr. Suren's role is pivotal in making sure our systems stay strong and resilient. With more than 14 years of experience under his belt, he's a master of Linux system administration, information security, and the smart practices that keep digital worlds safe. Mr. Suren's journey is backed by a master's degree in information security and a bachelor's degree in information and communication technology from the respected University of Columbus Schools of Computing. And his ongoing dedication is evident in a lineup of prestigious Red Hat certification showcasing his powers in all things in Linux. Today's conversation about Linux server hardening isn't just theory, it's about the real world action we take to defend against evolving cyber threats. And get ready for practical insights, real examples, and a deep dive into why Linux server hardening matters so much in today's digital space. So let's embark on this learning adventure together. Join us in welcoming Mr. Sashika Suren, a true tech luminary, and he guides us through the essentials of Linux server hardening and its impactful role in securing our digital universe. Over to you, Sashika.
Thanks, Tamini. So, good day to you. So let's go ahead with the discussions on Linux hardening, why it is important. For first of all, I just need to ensure like this is going to be a sort of a um, first discussions on this kind of series like the Linux hardening because so we have to go through certain discussions and certain understanding, and then only we can go ahead with the implementation aspects on Linux server hardening. So, like of course, this is going to be one session of this kind of series, and there will be more hardening discussions. We are going to have it. So basically, in this particular forum, like what we're trying to give you here is why we need the hardening and what kind of areas that we can consider on the hardening aspect. So in that, we'll be looking at the automation part, and because it's not basically practical to do similar tasks again and again. So we will be looking at the hardening along with the automation part as well. So if you look at the way of going today for these discussions, we'll look at the basic understanding of hardening and the impact of the hardening, how we will be going to consider about the Linux and Windows hardening, and the reason why we will be not mainly focused on the Windows, that also we can consider here, and the the practical aspects. So this is actually the last the point to consider point. We'll be giving you based on our experience, based on our examples that we have been going through in globally. And the last part, actually we don't go for a hardening automations, but of course we'll look at how to do the hardening automations, and in the coming sessions also we'll look at the hardening automation part as well. So obviously, if you look at the server hardening, is a it's a kind of a like the closed house, and a similar example like life experience is closed house and open house. So of course, if you have open house, that doesn't make any impact as you go. But obviously what you are going to see here is, it obviously you have the lot of features, you will be seeing a lot of nice views, but only thing here is, without knowing to your knowledge, there might be hidden targets. So if you are in a sort of a the closed house, like with the boundary walls and then again the CCTV, there may be different other security mechanisms that you have implemented in your environment. Of course, it might be a restricted environment where you don't see a full view as the open house, but still you feel safe. Similar thing happen in the hardening as well, irrespective of Windows or the Linux. So if you just uh, install the a server, Windows server or the Linux server, so what you are going to do here is, you just set the services there. You just set the services there, and you will be opening the exposing the content to the outside. So once you expose the content to the outside, the thing here is, it's you will be actually exposing the actually inviting the attackers to uh, do some damages. So increasing the attacking surface. That is the main idea that you need to understand. But if you go with the hardened server, obviously what you're trying to do here is, you will be getting you will be reducing the attacking surface to the attackers by removing unnecessary services. Likewise, there are certain areas that we definitely need to consider while we go forward. So that's the main idea on the server hardening. Anyway, uh, don't keep in mind like that once you do the hardening, that no one can hack into your environment. Of course, there are a lot of possibilities. So hardening is just one way of securing your infrastructure, but that doesn't mean that you are secure, because still you might be vulnerable. There might be different other ways that the vulnerabilities are exposed into the outside, especially like if you open the web application. So definitely you need to consider about the web application security as well, uh, apart from the server hardening aspects. But the server hardening will definitely reduce your attacking surface. I'll tell you one example. The 2 years back, actually, one of the banking environment, bank institute, actually, uh, there was a remote code execution attack on the server, that is through the web application, and they managed to plant the remote code execution, actually bash shell, and they were able to access their the server environment. It's a Linux server. Fortunately, the administrators was harden that environment and enable the advanced security mechanism on that environment. So because of that, they were able to secure the rest of the applications, while that compromised application, of course, it was compromised, but rest of the application was secured. The only thing that they was consider of removing that unsecured application from that server and run the rest of the application. So that's how we can secure our environment by using the server hardening. So that's like, we can't ensure that we are secured even though that we are saying that we have server hardening servers, but we can reduce the attacking surfaces. So that's the main idea on the server hardening. So if you look at the server hardening, we need to consider mainly the the five P's of security and the compliance. The first thing is, we need to have a that actually the five P's, in the sense, you need to do a proper planning to prevent the poor performance. So if you have not done the proper planning, of course, you are going through a sort of issues with the application availability, and the interconnectivity with the other microservices. So there might be a lot of issues. So what you really need to understand here is before going for a hardening, you need to do a proper planning. Proper planning in the sense nothing much. Uh, what you need to understand here is the the critical application running on top of the operating systems and the network connectivity with the other servers. Sometimes you might have the multi-tier architectures where you have the one microservice and then that will be connected with another microservice. So some similar like that. And then you need to get the this partitioning understanding. So what kind of technology that you have used and how they have done the this partitioning, because when it comes to Linux, we can have a traditional file system partitions normal by using the FDSCO GDIS tools. The second mechanism is we can have the LVM, logical volume manager. So if you're having the logical volume manager, of course, you can do a lot there. But if you are dealing with the traditional file system partitioning, so of course, we can't think about the hardening on the disk management part. So there are certain other areas likewise. So you need to understand those things by going through the server and the users in the systems, what kind of authentications they are using. So these are the before you go for a hardening, you need to definitely understand these things. The critical things is application which is running on the server and the network connectivity. That is also very much important, because let's say for example, even the application, when you say application, let's say if you are running uh, a Kubernetes environment, so the Kubernetes clusters that you are trying to harden the worker nodes. So obviously, you might be need to very much careful on that, because there might be issues with the once you done the hardening, there might be you might go through the issues with the uh, adding the worker nodes to the Kubernetes clusters, so the master nodes. So likewise, there might be different cases like that you might come across if you don't understand the exact application running on top of the operating system. That's why I'm telling you, very much you need to understand the application running on it, and then the network connectivity. This partitioning and the users in the system, of course, that is much required, but it's not very much important for planning this one. So then the second phase here is you might need to determine the security baselines which we are going to install and the deployment. How you are going to deal with the appropriate access rights and how we are going to enforce those things, and the what kind of privilege that we have to assign for the users, because there might be users in the systems who are having unnecessary privileges. So in that case, you need to remove those privileges. Before that, you have to understand, like if we remove those privileges, are there any impact on the systems? Because let's say, for example, one particular hardening steps in the Linux environment is to disable the direct root access. That means when you try to SSH the machine, you will not be able to, like by default, you can use the root username and the password to log into the Linux machines. But in the hardening, what you need to do is you need to disable it. So when you go for a disable that type of environment, so you need to have another non-privileged user in your systems. Otherwise, of course, you won't be able to access it because you are disabling the root access. So before enabling that particular feature, that particular hardening check, you need to create a non-privileged user in your systems which should be able to access the environment. So likewise, there are certain things that you have to determine. And my suggestion here is you might need to consider actually the hardening with the installation of the OS. That is the best way to do that one, because then when you go for application installs, so we can start troubleshooting from that point onwards. We can sometimes you might need to disable some security checks, and or sometimes you might have some sort of workarounds there or exceptions. So likewise, you need to like you have the liberty to decide and performs your task there. So the very best way to start your hardening is to with the OS installation. So while you are doing the OS installations, you can start on doing the server hardening. But like doesn't matter that. But if you have the already installed operating systems, obviously uh, you need to handle this with the care. So today's sessions will discuss the points that we can consider for the hardening if it is with the OS installations, or the points that we can consider for the hardening if it is already installed operating system. So we have the different points that we need to consider, like OS, like some points which considered in the OS installations cannot be considered for the already installed OSs. So that's the case. So we have to definitely think about like how we are going to deal with the OS installations and how we are going to deal with the already installed OSs. Once you complete this hardening practices, so you need to definitely test it. So there are different compliance assessment tools. Like if you want, you can use there is a open source tool called OpenVAS that you can use it, or else there are a lot of other commercialized tools available. If you do have commercialized tools, you can use those tools to do the assessments. Normally, the some people might say that we have to comply 90%, we have to comply 85%, we have to comply 80%. So it's purely depend on the organization and your security policies. So it's not like that, right? If you consider the the main facts which which can be a threat to the uh, organizations, those are the things that you have to focused on hardening while you are doing the hardening. So at least the recommended industry recommendation is, if like let's say for example, if you have 100 checks, so at least you if you can able to comply 75% of those or the 75 checks, so that is considered as a good compliance. So the compliance ratio, it's purely depend actually, I must say, because different organization might tell different things. Sometimes they might tell 80%, sometimes 90%, 75%, 80%. So it depends basically. So that doesn't matter. But like if you at least try to reach to the 75% benchmark, so that is quite good. The reason why we'll be not considering mainly the Windows Server hardening part. So it's a obvious thing because the Windows Server hardening is pretty much straightforward. You have the if you are dealing with the Active Directory environment, so you can entirely manage through the Active Directory. So you just need to create the group policy object and with the relevant group policies, and then just enforce those group policies to the different organization units or OUs. So that's will conclude your hardening and will ensure that you are comply with the hardening guidelines. So that also contain, like if you compare the industry given guidelines, so if you compare the Windows and the Linux, of course Windows have more checks than the Linux. Let's say Windows Linux environment have at least 475 plus checks. But if you go with the Windows having I think more than 600 checks there, if I'm not mistaken. So that is the number. So like the number wise, it's higher than the Linux environments, but still almost quite easy because it's a one click away to harden many number of servers within a flash. So just a matter of creating one group policy or multiple group policies. It's based on your requirement. You can create one group policy or multiple group policies, and then attach to the different OUs, organization units, and push those group policies as well. Whether respective of hardening operating system, like whether you can go for a Windows, Linux, even for the Sun Solaris. So respective of the hardening guideline, so there are different uh, authorities who have been provided these standards. The main benchmark or the framework which you are using is the CIS benchmark, Center of Internet Security. So this is quite good benchmark which you can use it. And there is another one like PCI DSS related benchmarking as well, payment card industry data security standard. But still, though it is, they will provide that the hardening is quite important for the PCI DSS. It's a sort of the checks are being leveraged from the CIS benchmark. So like if you want to comply the PCI DSS requirements, so it is pretty much enough if you if you follow the CIS benchmark. That is quite sure. And then again, we have the STIG Security Technical Implementation Guide, which is also another main authority standard which we are using, and the NIST, National Institute of Standards and the Technology. So out of these, definitely I can recommend you, I can provide you the recommendations that you can definitely use the CIS benchmark. That is quite sure. The 100% accurate, and even if you look at the, I'll show you one guideline. Even when you go for a hardening, so sometimes almost all the times they will provide you the examples as well, like the commands, which command that you need to execute, how we are going to execute it, and how you audit this one, whether this is actually done or not. So all these in detail will be provided in the CIS benchmark guidelines. So guys, and if you do have any questions while we are going through, I think you can put it in the chat as well. So the important point here is what kind of points that we need to consider. The reason why I have been putting two things for the fresh installation and the existing operation system server installations, there are certain things which we cannot do in the existing operating system hardening. If you are going with the fresh installations, of course, it is possible to deal with the proper disk management. So that is quite sure. In the CIS benchmark, they will tell you you need to have a separate home directory, separate varlog directory, separate varlog audit directory, separate root directory. And apart from that, they will ask you to create a separate home directory, temp directory, and the dev shm directory. The reason why they have been asked us to provide the separate directories is because like the varlog audit, and the home. These are the folders which consume a lot of hard disk in general terms, because in the varlog there might be different type of logs available in that folder, like messages, and then again secure logs, auth logs. So uh, then again boot log. So there might be different logs available. So in that case, you might need to retain the logs for a certain period of times. Like by default, Linux machines will retain the logs for a 1 month time period. But of course, there might be cases like due to the compliances, you need to retain these logs for a 6 month, 12 months time period. In that case, that will definitely consume your hard disk. So without interrupting your root directory /root directory and to run the services as expected, though there is any issues with the hard disk capacities for the var log directory, that will not impact to the root and the applications running on it. That's why the main purpose, that's why they ask us to put the separate var log directory and the var log audit. Audit is a separate directory that they ask us to create a separate mount point. The reason is again the hard disk capacity. So if you look at the hard disk capacity in here, so the important thing here is though that we are running out of spaces for the home directory, varlog directory, varlog audit directory, that does not impact to the server performance or the server availability. Because if it is considered like / that is the root directory, what we call it as, if all the things in one part mount point like varlog, audit, root, home, everything like normal partitioning, everything will be under the root directory / So in that case, the if you are running out of space, so it will impact your applications running on it. Uh, that is the case. So because of that, they will ask you to create a separate home directory, varlog, audit, and the root directory. And apart from that, the temp and the dev/shm directory as well. It is possible, if it is possible, like better to go ahead with the encryptions. Uh, this is again in real world. Again, I'm telling. Uh, OS encryption having certain cases, certain issues actually. Like if there are, if the key, the key storage locations is corrupted, then you can't have a booted machines. So that is the main issue. So if you're going with the encryptions, you might need to be very careful to maintain the backup every time it is as much as possible. The reason is the key corruptions. So if the key is corrupted, you can't definitely recover the encrypted details servers, because once you reboot it, you cannot until you until you up and running, there won't be any issues. But once you've done the reboot, you can't recover these things if the key which is stored in your hard disk is corrupted, that location. But a recommendation is, if it is like you can go for encryptions, it is better. That is also quite good. So in Linux environment, if you want to do the encryption, so they will provide you the concept called the solution called LUKS, LUKS. LUKS can be used for the encryption, but keep in mind, either you need to back up your keys or you have to have the backup of your data as well. Then you can do the disable unnecessary file system. So when it comes to this one, there might be a lot of unnecessary file systems available, like cramp fs, vfat, then again scosh fs. Likewise, there might be unnecessary file system. So if you look at the environment, like the reason why I told you in the beginning, like you need to consider about the securing your, you need to consider about your services and the disk management. This is why I'm telling, like when you're disabling the unnecessary file system, you might be again very careful. Sometimes you might have a fat partition, vfat enable boot partitions. In that case, if you disable the vfat, again you will be getting the unbootable OS. So you might need to with the df-ht command, it's just a simple command, you can get the simply like this. So just to show you, like df-ht command, you can get the type here. So here you can see uh, this is actually Amazon running machine. You can disable the scosh fs as well, because if you disable the scosh fs, several agents and the some LXDs, this is the Linux container daemon, and the Amazon SSM agent will not be going to work. So that's the case. That's why I'm telling you, like you might need to very much careful what kind of file system that we can disable. So you can't disable this course FS in this particular scenario. But rest you can disable it. That's what you really need to understand here. And the unnecessary services. If you look at the unnecessary services, disable unnecessary services, they might give you all the service list. Like you might need to disable the postfix, you might need to disable the send mail, you might need to disable the named service, SFTP service, FTP service. There might be like 10 plus services, like the services will be provided. But let's say, for example, if your service is running a DNS, obviously you can't disable the named service because it's the core service. If your server is a mail server or mail gateway or mail filtering server, of course you cannot be able to disable the postfix because it's a core service that is running in that environment. So that's why you have to have a keep, like you have to have a sound idea about the application running on it. Based on that, you can disable the unnecessary service. Disable in the sense, it is better like if you can uninstall from the server, because that will reduce again the attacking surface. And the most important thing here is you need to definitely enable advanced security mechanisms. If you are going with the Red Hat family OSs, you can enable the C Linux. If you are going with the Debian family OSs like Ubuntu, Kubuntu, Red Hat family OSs, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, CentOS, Rocky Linux, so something like that, similar these things. And Amazon Linux, of course, Amazon Linux, Oracle Linux. So those are actually coming under Red Hat family OSs. So you need to definitely enable the say Linux. And if it is a Debian OS family OSs like Ubuntu, Kubuntu, Debian Server OS, so AppArmor should be enabled. These two actually provide a sort of a advanced security mechanisms, which is normal uh, file system permission is a sort of a discretionary access control, or rather we call it as a DAC. DAC in the sense, it's a straightforward, like you will be giving, like this user can access this particular folder with these permissions. It's a straightforward. But if you want to provide these permissions based on the policies, the rather we call it as a mandatory access control list, MAC. So based on the policies, of course, they can access, gain these things. So for that, you need to have the Linux or the AppArmor. Once you enable this Linux or AppArmor, the beauty of this one is, let's say you have a multiple services. You have web service on the server, you have MySQL or database service, and you have, let's say, for example, mail service. You have 3 services running on the same server. Still, if you have these 3 services, let's say web service is compromised, still the Linux or AppArmor will secure your 2 other services. That will ensure that though your web service compromised, still that compromised users or the attackers cannot access the rest of the services running on the server. That's the beauty that you are getting. That's the Linux or AppArmor. So the advanced security mechanisms. So this is actually we have experienced this one. Huh? So the previous example that I told you from the beginning, like the bank example. One of the bank, they actually hack the web applications, but still there were several other services running on top of that server, but that those servers, those applications were secured, though the web application was compromised. And then the next important thing here is security patches and the other patch. So whenever you spin up fresh machine, or whenever you install fresh uh, Linux environment, you need to definitely run, if it is a yum, you have to run the yum install update command. If it is apt Debian, you have to run the apt get update and apt get upgrade command. So that will ensure that you install the latest patches. That might be security patches or the bug fixes, that doesn't matter. This is for the fresh installations. And definitely you need to enable the audit logs. Audit logs in the sense, once you enable the audit logs, let's say for example, if someone try to change your time, date and time, of course you need to enable those things. If someone logged in and logged out, you have to enable the audit. If someone try to do a restart on the services, you need to enable the audit. So likewise, there are different things from the within this series of discussions. We'll discuss further on these points one by one by taking these things, and we'll see how we are going to do the implementations as well by using the Linux commands. That is, the audit has to be enabled. Then again, securing SSH. There are certain set of parameters that you need to consider when you are going for securing SSH. So you need to disable the root access, direct root access. Ensure that ciphers, we are using the strong ciphers, not the weak ciphers, that we have to provide. And then we need to set um, the timeout limits on the SSH environment. So likewise, we have to provide the different parameters there. User and access management also, we need to think about certain things like we don't have a duplicate users in the systems. So I'll tell you one thing, like if you want to look at the duplicate users, so normally the users in these systems might be like, let's say, for example, all the users will be written in here. Like if you want to look at the users, what you can do is you can get this you can cut this one and get the first parameter, and you can sort it. Let's take the user IDs. So the first parameter will take the parameter. Third parameter will provide the user ID here. Now it is sorted. Yeah, this has been sorted. Like if you have a duplicate users, like you will be able to see the duplicate IDs, duplicate users, the way that you are going to create, find out the duplicate users. So this is how, like, there are different other ways also that you can use it. See here. So there won't be any duplicate user ID here. So likewise, you don't see these things. So likewise, you can use these commands, different commands to deal with this, to understand duplicate user IDs. And then again, file system permissions also. There are certain permissions that we need to consider. Like we have the different files actually, etc cron tab files. So these things have a necessary permissions, like no one should be able to read the shadow file. So if there are any changes, you should be able to look at this one. So sorry, not the, yeah, etc shadow files has not to be, should not be able to read it. But in this case, in the Ubuntu environment, they have given read write permissions to the root user. The rest of the users does not have anything. The shadow group will have the read permissions. So likewise, you need to ensure that the proper permissions are being set, and if it is not there, so you have to set those things. So likewise, the permission sets has to be properly set, and the user and the group settings. So in here, we have to ensure that the group settings, in the sense, sometimes you might see the sudo's file in here. In the sudo's file, you might see the different user details, and the different parameters are being set. So in those cases, you have to ensure that the users are being properly secured, and sudo privileges are properly given with the permissions. And the network configuration security, you might need to disable the ICMPs, ICMP redirections. So likewise, there are certain other parameters that has to be disabled. And finally, you can do the firewall configuration. This is again, I must say, this is not a must thing, because if you do have a perimeter level and the internal level firewalls, you can secure your communications through those. But this will add another extra layer of security, but again, it will create a extra overhead as well. The reason is, whenever you are allowing services, you need to think about this firewall and enable all the services and the ports from this firewall as well. So it's extra overhead for us to manage the servers, but still, if it is possible, that is quite good. When it comes to the existing operating system hardening, you might definitely need to remember that do not consider about the disk management. In that case, if you made any mistakes, this will lead to a non-bootable operating systems. Because sometimes if you running with the logical volume management concept of LVM, of course that is possible. If you're running with the LVM concept of LVM, of course that is possible. But again, if you made any mistakes while you are uh, making changes to the volume group, specifically volume group, so that will again make an issue, like sometimes you might not be able to boot your machine. So the very best recommendation that I can provide here is based on the experience that we have gone through. Do not consider on the disk management uh, with the existing operating system hardware. You can consider on enable audit logs, securing SSH, use and access management, file system permissions, use and group settings. These are definitely possible. The next point is when you try to enable the advanced security mechanisms like say Linux or AppArmor. This again, you can enable it, but if you like say for example, when you are dealing with the web 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 service, Apache, let's say Apache Nginx web server, normally if you are going with the default locations, like the configuration files are set in the etc nginx folder, the document root are set to the var www html environment. If you are going with this default folder locations for your services, of course nothing to worry about enabling the Linux. But if there are any customized locations folders which you are going with, so of course you have to be very careful, because it will definitely lead to non-working applications. Not the you can boot your machines, but the applications might not work. So whenever you are going to enable the say Linux or AppArmor, you should have a sound knowledge on what is happening there. Of course, when it comes to say Linux or AppArmor, there are different type of troubleshooting tools. Like say Linux have say Linux troubleshoot tool, where you can use those tools to troubleshoot it. But keep in mind, like if you do not have much confidence on this, the advanced security mechanisms, configuration mechanisms, please do not consider about doing the configurations or enabling the say Linux or AppArmor in the existing operating systems. You can definitely consider about the network configuration security, disable unnecessary file system, disable unnecessary services, and again the configure firewall. Like this, definitely once you enable the firewall, your entire application stack will not going to work, because it will block from the firewall unless you open the ports. So if you didn't open the ports, so of course it's a blocking. So because of that, again, what you need to understand, what you need to very much consider, when you try to configure the firewall in existing operating system where it is already running applications, if you're having the running applications, so you might need to very much consider on the configuring firewall as well. So these are the things that you need to consider while you are going with the fresh installation and the existing operating system hardware. But there are certain points that you can definitely ignore. Don't use any kind of file integrity check systems. Like in the guidelines, it says that you can use the AIDE, that is the solutions they are providing. Don't install that one. It will definitely consume your CPU and the memory. So it will give you much headache, like definitely a headache, and will just ended up with consuming your entire resources when they are running the integrity check on the entire file system. Because think about, like if you try to run a integrity check on the 1 TB file system, so of course it's a huge overhead that is not required. You either like if you want to do that one, you can use third-party file integrity theme solutions and put it your agents there, and then you can do those things. That is possible. Secure boot settings, what they say here is you need to put the set the graph password. If it obviously if you are going with the the cloud environment, you can't set those graph password, encrypt your graph. That is also not required. Don't do those two things. That is definitely not required. TCP wrappers, not required, because this is very basic level of securing your environment, because you have more advanced concepts. TCP wrapper is a type of a firewall that try to implement, but that you will be having firewall configured, and you are having perimeter firewalls, internal firewalls. There might be a lot of things in the your enterprise environment. So definitely you don't want to consider about the TCP wrappers. PAM, pluggable authentication modules. This is one of the critical thing. If your Linux server is not doing a user management, like multiple user management, PAM is definitely not required. Because I'm again telling, because we have gone through one incident, like mistakenly someone has configured the PAM. Because of that, when he has done the reboot, so no one can be able to log into the machine. So if you misconfigured the PAM, definitely you will be having inaccessible operating system. Rest of the services might run, but you can't access the operating systems. Authentication failures will be there. So then we need to take a downtime, boot your machine to the emergency mode or the rescue mode, and then only we can do the rollbacks. So keep in mind, don't enable or configure the PAM uh, unless you are doing the user management on your environment. Most probably we are not doing user management in Linux servers, rather we are running the different services. And syslog ng service is not required for the configurations. You can survive with the rsyslog, because that is the log management mechanisms which is available in the by default available in the Linux system. And then again, etc host.allow, host.deny, that is also not required, which is not going to be a part of the configurations. As I told you, like set password for graph, encrypt the graph, like guaranteed not required. Then again, GPG key configuration. By default, when you do the installations, GPG key is already installed and configured. But there might be cases down the line, those GPG keys might be get expired. This is actually a sort of a security that we are getting. Like whenever you want to install any packages through the internet, of course, in Windows, what we are doing is we just download the exe and then double click on it, run it. But in the most of the time in Linux environment, they have given a tool called yum or the apt in Windows and the Linux. Red Hat and the Ubuntu, Debian. So that will be give you like we just want to say apt install whatever the package name, yum install whatever the package name. Then what they are going to do is they are going to install the package along with the dependencies. We don't want to worry about the dependencies. Actually, what they're trying to do here is in your operating systems. Let me show you that one also. It has been configured under the in Linux environment. We have the etc apt source list. This is actually the they will be downloading the content from the different environment. So whenever you want to download the content from the different repositories, these actually different repositories, you might need to tell. Sometimes there is another one as well. You might need to tell how we are going to trust these repos. The way that we are going to trust the repo is by using these GPG keys. GPG keys in the sense, let's say there are two persons, person A and the person B. Person A personally know the person B, and the person B personally know another person called person C. So A and B is friend, B and C is also friend. So automatically, based on that understanding, A and C also can be friend. So likewise, sort of a web of trust mechanisms that we are going to deal with the GPG key concepts. But only thing here is the down the line, these keys might be get expired and obsolete. In that case, whenever you try to install the packages, you might get errors. The key is not trusted. Sometimes we have been come across like some repositories might not managing the GPG keys properly. in that case, we need to disable it, because willingly or unwillingly we have to do that one. Otherwise, we can't go for installations of anything in the Linux environment. Because of that, we might need to very much careful that we definitely we need to go with the GPG configurations. Whenever we adding any kind of APT source list, you need to definitely enable the GPG keys. You have to import those keys and install into your environment. But if there are any obsolete keys, expire keys, so willingly or unwillingly, you have to disable the GPG check as well. So those are the things that you can safely ignore, because though you have done these things, that doesn't make much impact on your attacking surfaces or reducing your attack surfaces as well. So just to give you a rough idea on this. So basically, like right now we have discussed so many things about the what we need to do in the hardening. And of course, again, I'm telling, since this is a series of cybersecurity sessions which is conducted by the ADL, so we'll have another 2 to 3 sessions about this hardening, because this is not a sort of a one night show, obviously, and we have to go for a different cases, like different sessions, to learn these things and get the idea. Of course, guarantee that I can ensure we will be definitely going for another 2 to 3 sessions about the hardening, how we are going to do a manual hardening. I'll show you some cases, and then the automation part. So the automation part is actually pretty much important to know, that we are suggesting to use Ansible. There are different type of automation languages like Puppet, mainly Ansible, Puppet, and the Salt. But I must say, because since I have already used this one, so this is pretty much straightforward and very much easy to use, and even very much easy to learn as well. So Ansible is a sort of a tool which you can do the automations for IT configuration management, deployment, anything, server hardening. So everything can be possible except the infrastructure deployments. You can deploy the infrastructure by using Ansible, but configuration management, obviously it is possible. So with the Ansible, what we will be going to use, we are going to use the a concept called playbook. Actually, the playbook can be written using the YAML language, yet another markup language, YAML, YAML, and it's just a one-time matter, like a Windows Active Directory group policy. So you just write it down the playbook, YAML, by using the YAML language, and then it's a matter of running it. Pretty much straightforward. So within few clicks, again, you can do a like 100 plus servers in one shot. Again, when you go for 100 plus servers in one shot, you have to be very careful which servers are using, because there might be some servers are using postfix. In that case, we can't disable the postfix service. Some servers are not using the postfix. In that case, we might need to disable the postfix. So likewise, there might be slightly changes in the playbooks. So sometimes you might need to have multiple playbooks based on the server roles, similar to the multiple group policies, but still you can run it in one shot. So the Ansible is a good tool where you can use it. Otherwise, if you look at the CIS, you can directly use the already hardened images. So even if you are using cloud environment, so they in the marketplace, they will provide you the hardened images, but you need to definitely make some payment there. But that obviously possible to use it. So CIS also providing hardened images that you can download and get it. I think for the CIS, you don't want to make a payment, if I'm not mistaken. you can directly download it from the CIS websites. But still, if you want to have, because that is all that hardening was actually done by them based on the industry practices, sometimes which might not fit it for your environment. So the best recommended way is install your own image freshly and do the hardening by your own by using the Ansible. That is the best way to do it. So we'll go for the next couple of sessions. Actually, we can do like how we'll go through the in detail discussions on the one of the CIS benchmark and try to do a hardening there manually. And apparently, like once we done that one, then we can look at the how we are going to do the hardening by using the Ansible. So let's learn some Ansible as well. So through these sessions, so definitely ADL will provide you support on by leveraging our experiences, by leveraging our knowledge uh, to the industry, to share our knowledge, to share our experiences, and then make the better IT world in here in globally. So with this, guys, I'm going to wind up the sessions. But if you guys have any questions, we can have a Q&A session as well. Like you can ask any questions there. I think you can put it into the chat if you do have any question related to the hardening. Of course, again, I'm telling we'll go for a next few sessions about these practical implementations and the automations part as well. Nothing to worry. Guys, if you do have any questions, you can definitely ask.
Hi everyone, you can either raise your hand or drop your question on the chat box. So Sashika will answer it if there are any. Shashika, seems like there are no questions, is it?
Yes, it seems like we are good, right?
Yeah, seems that everyone has learned a lot from you. So as we okay, there's
Yes,
one
yes.
question. Yes.
Yes, yes, Sanjay. Like definitely, we'll schedule another sessions to get you in-depth understanding on this one. Definitely, like within next couple of weeks, we can schedule one. Yes, Sakila. Yes, the AppArmor actually, there's one questions like the AppArmor. AppArmor is a mandatory access control mechanisms where, let's say for example, if you have a multiple application running on it on your environment, say again, web server, Postfix, and then again database. In that case, when you running that application, uh, yeah, when you running that applications, so what they are going to do is they are going to create a sort of a boundaries based on the policies configured on the AppArmor. Let's say, for example, Postfix, they will create a policy, and that policy says if you want to access configuration file, then you need to have this label. If you want to access, uh, let's say, for example, the documentation file, you need to have this policy label. So when you when you create that territory, like it's like a kingdom. So within that kingdom, so they will have all the policies with the labels. So in that case, only that labels, if once you start the service, so you have the boundary created, the territory created, and only the labels that you have can be able to access those territories. The rest of the things, like if anyone try to going for a different areas or different environments, different labels, that is by default denied by the policy. So it's purely the policy based environment where you will be using into it. So the app armor is something like that. So I will show you those things while we are going with some practical sessions as well, Manoj. Yes, definitely, Akila. Like when it comes to the physical server and the cloud server hardening, as I told you, in the cloud server environment, you don't get the boot, you don't get the boot options, grub security, boot secure booting settings. Those things cannot be done. But physical server, of course, you can do those things. Uh, like it's not a much differences. Like we can say, like at like 90% of the checks will be available for both physical and the cloud environment, and most of the things, the boot related content will not be available in the cloud environment to do the hardening, like encrypting the boots, encrypting your grub, setting the password for the grub. So likewise, those things will not be available. Yes, Lakshit. So we can definitely get the hardened images in the cloud environment as well through the marketplace. If you go for AWS marketplace, they will provide you. But only thing here is you can take it for the different hardening framework. Like if you want to have the CIS hardening image, that is available, STIG that is available. So you can take it. But only thing here is then you need if you are using those things, you need to make a payment there. I think per hour it's 0.002 USD. So it's an additional cost for your environment. So better like rather than going with those things, it's better like if you can do hardening by your own as well. Any other questions, guys?
Seems there are no questions, Shashika.
Yes.
Yeah. So as we bring this enlightening session to a close, our sincere appreciation goes to Mr. Sashika Suren for graciously sharing his profound insights into Linux server hardening. Thank you, Shashika. We trust that this journey has not only been informative, but has also ignited a spark of curiosity and awareness as well. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to each of you for joining us in this insightful webinar. And I personally believe that the insights gained here today will undoubtedly serve as a compass in navigating the complexities of cybersecurity. And this is just the beginning. This session marks the inaugural step in a series of exploration of Linux and aimed at unraveling the complexities of this session and the tech universe, as Shashika highlighted in many times. So stay tuned for more enlightening sessions as we continue to delve into the myriad faces of technology. Until we meet again, stay curious, stay secure, and keep thriving in the dynamic realm of technology. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for the participation.